Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Community League. We are getting closer to the end of Season 2. We are here in Fuji for this race, for episode 5 of 6. And I'm not alone today, because I'm joined by Tim Ireland once again.
Hello. Are you looking forward to this Fuji Fantasia?
It took quite the daytime for you to come up with that, didn't you?
I literally just popped into my head and I thought, I'll say that, it sounds dumb.
Fair point. Yeah, today will be, even though we have less cars than we are used to on the grid. I mean, last time was our card, we had 4 cars going into turn 1, we will not see that today. But, or maybe we will, there's a possibility, but I highly doubt it with the nature of the track. However, it's still very interesting in the grand scheme of the championship. We will get more into that later on. We're right now in qualifying, watching Joachim Thunder come around the final turn. And what do you expect today for the championship, but also for the race itself?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a longer race than people are generally used to. It's a 45-minute race, so still within sprint race territory. There'll be a pit stop along the way, which we always find fun. But yeah, there's a few names I'm less familiar with in here than a few names, sorry, that are unfamiliar to me in here this week. So it's hard to not immediately say Dominic Ladler's going to win, but I'm thinking he'll get a good push from Joachim Thunder for sure.
I mean, in all fairness, after the first lap, Joachim Thunder has 6/10 on him.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I think it will be quite interesting because Dominic Ladler sometimes seems to struggle at Fuji a bit. It's not his strongest track, and meanwhile Joachim Thunder seems to be doing quite well. It will be interesting in the longer one though, because both are good in the long one, but the Audi is very tricky long circuits like this one.
Yeah, and Ladler's had a couple of up and down races recently. I'm sure if he can get off the line and get into a nice rhythm, we all know he's pretty much like a Terminator. He just carries on putting lap after lap after lap, and nothing seems to phase him. But he's had a few chinks in his armor in the last couple of races, so it'll be interesting to see which Dominic Ladler turns up this week.
Very true, very true. I mean, we will see this lap. If it's an improvement, he's now catching up to that should be Soprich in the Green Harrier car, which I'm more used to from Tim Schroeder, who unfortunately isn't here today.
But he's here in spirit because someone stolen his livery.
That's a very good point to make. Other than that, we have again quite the good mixture of cars, and we have 4 different makers in the top 4. You are used to this at this point, I guess.
I know, if only they'd got together and organised a bit more, we could have had 2 of each car, but somebody ruined it by taking an M4. If they just swapped to the Audi, it would have been perfection.
Balanced, as all things should be. We're still waiting for Kane, Jaraf and Kolbeck to put in valid lap times, but that will resolve fairly soon, I guess. Even though not.
Yeah, they've not got long left. Currently 3 minutes 30 left of qualifying, so if anybody wants to do a last-minute ditch lap, they're going to have to do it soon.
But yeah, what we talked earlier about with the championship, if we take a look at the standings, and those are outdated standings actually, let me quickly fix this up. There we go, those are the standings after Orchard Road last time around. Dominic Ladler has a 140-point lead over Joachim Thunder. That's quite a lot of points.
it's quite an impressive lead. You can't deny. He's doing pretty well. Lucas not turning up tonight because he's on holiday. But we've also got no Alizea, no Jarretta, no Adrian Luna. In fact, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of the top end people. Have we done something controversial? Are they boycotting?
Who knows? But yeah, all jokes aside, of course, Joachim Thunder unfortunately had to miss one round due to internet issues, if I recall that correctly, which
Yeah.
would be about 100 to 120 points in value if he finishes as usual. So, of course, that's a huge blow to his championship in that way. But there's still 2 races to go. If he can hang on to it this race, maybe beat Dominic Ludler as well, he is still in for the championship. Mathematically, definitely, but maybe also a bit closer in terms of the actual chance of dethroning Dominic Ludler, our current Season 1 champion as well.
He's definitely putting in some decent laps so far in qualifying, so it's looking good for him.
Meanwhile, Michael Caine has put it in 4th in front of Dennis Kurzer, and Pierre Colbeck is in 6th. But the front row, of course, Thunder and Ladler. Are you surprised by Thunder beating Ladler on a track like this?
I am, yeah, to be honest. I've got to admit, sorry, Joachim, but I did expect Dominic Ladler to come out ahead. And 4/10 is a pretty decent gap as well. So I'm sure we'll be pretty happy with that.
Dominic Ladler trying some starts here, even though it will be a rolling start. It won't be a standing start. It will be very interesting in the longer run, I think, with the both of them. The cars behave a bit different over the longer race duration. I think in terms of pit stops, they both know exactly what to do. So no big surprises there. And they also have quite the experience on Fuji at this point with longer races.
Yeah, it's no longer the new track on the block, so to speak. It's been around for a while. People have been hitting it on the daily races as well as leagues and the longer race events. So people have definitely got its measure by now.
Indeed. And talking about getting their measure and getting used to stuff. What a translation, wasn't it?
Silky smooth.
This is next week's schedule, week 33, of course. We will switch some things around. Of course, as explained last time, the series or the weeks will change per week. That definitely makes sense, but it's not what I wanted to say. But the combinations of races will change per week, and we replaced the Hypercar series with the 911 Cup series, so that one's back. Many people really like that car, so we brought it back for a couple of weeks. Do you spot something on there that you definitely want to drive?
Well, I've always been a fan of the 911 Cup in other simulators, so I'll be definitely keen to jump in on some of those races. And contrary to other members of staff, as we mentioned before, I also like the Nürburgring GP series. So Porsche Cup, Nürburgring GP, 30 minutes. That seems like a good choice to me.
Indeed, of course, next week will also be the RCE at the Nürburgring. GT3 shootout, if you want to say so. But we can also hear GT3s roaring in the background, and that for us means that we will go back to live footage, because we will be going fairly soon, the safety car leading them through the final turn. Here at Fuji, it's nighttime, it's dark, but the drivers will surely cope with that.
Yeah, they understand how to do that, I know. Most of them, anyway.
Dominic Lala trying to position himself as far left as possible as well.
He is, yeah.
And we go racing here in Fuji. It's a good start from Sobrich in third in the AMG on the inside. I think that's Coin in the BMW. Oh, and Sobrich going in D, pushing Dominic Lala out of turn 1, and Joachim Thunder's going through.
Yeah, somebody going flying off in the distance there at turn 1. That was car number 7, Pierre Colback. Dominic Ladler got a fairly dream start there and getting ahead of Joachim Thunder, but then unfortunately getting pushed wide, and that's let Thunder through. So they'll be keen to latch on the back of him as soon as possible.
I mean, Sobrich really kind of made a mess out of turn 1 in this case. Might not have been on purpose. I mean, it was a tiny misjudgment with the braking in the end. Oh, and Kane going very deep into the chicane.
It's an easy thing to do on that chicane, I think, especially in the dark. I'm one of those terrible people that uses braking markers that then, when it gets dark, you can't see them anymore.
It might help if you can still see them. It might. Let's keep it like that.
It's generally useful, yes. Audio braking markers, not so useful.
But the gap between Joachim Thunder and Dominic Lala after lap 1 is 1.2 seconds. That's quite the gap to overcome for Dominic Lala.
Is, yeah. I would have thought Ladler would have been pushing to try and close that gap as much as possible. Obviously, his qualifying lap wasn't as fast as Thunder's, but I'm sure they're both at least a bit wary about tyres and how they're going to last. Neither of them want to change tyres for sure.
Meanwhile, Oscar Sobrich got back at the end of the train, of the BMW train, from P3 to P5. And he was fast. I mean, he was 1.2 seconds off in qualifying, of course, of Joachim Thunder, but that's still a couple of tenths up on, I think it was Kurzer who was starting in P4.
Yeah, I think that was right. But yeah, good pace, and I'm sure he'll be working his way up through the field as we carry on this race. He's got plenty of time, especially with battling BMWs in front of him.
It was a beautiful move by Johnson there on Kurzer. I think that was Kane spinning off, exiting the which is actually Dunlop chicane, I think. So we're trying to find a way through, but it's not that easy with two very wide BMWs in front of him.
He went for a late apex there to cut back in down the straight, but he just got blocked off by the BMW in front. So he is a bit frustrated with the way he's flashing his lights, keeping the spirit of Tim Schreider alive.
In the same car nonetheless. But here comes the move from Kurzer on Johnson, trying to reclaim that position. Which actually now became one better with Kane being out of the picture for now. I think that won't be the last time we see these two fight.
No, I don't think so. They seem fairly evenly matched. And in exactly the same hardware. It's always an interesting fight. I'm sure Soprich back there is having different ideas, because he does seem to have quicker pace than the two of them.
Johnson.
Oh, and then Johnson sliding out.
On the grass. Maybe also have been pushed a bit too wide by Kurzer, but that's a bit hard to see from that angle, because you can barely judge how much asphalt there was. But didn't lose him too much time, luckily. Meanwhile,
at the front of the field, Dominic Ladler did was keeping the gap pretty consistently at 1.2 seconds, but he seems to have dropped way back to 2.8 now.
Surely was a bit of an oops moment somewhere.
I assume so, because he's nowhere near anybody, so it should have been a self-inflicted moment. For losing a bit of time as his tires get back down to normal temperature.
Here comes Sopfrich though. Of course, big slipstream down the straight in Fuji, braking very late, might be a bit too late. Has to catch the car. And Kurzer reclaims third position.
That was a brilliant cutback there. He read the situation, just stayed wide and let Sopfrich hang himself, and then swooped back in to take the position back.
Was also a bit unfortunate for Sopfrich there, wasn't it? He turned into the corner and the car just ever so slightly stepped out, but if you have to correct the steering into turn 1, straighten the car out, you basically go way wider than, for example, on other tracks where the turn doesn't fall away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something you've got to be wary of when you're coming into Fuji turn 1. Sopfrich making a go on the inside here, but having to really anchor it up. Give up the inside line.
Kurzer had a lot of momentum after going wide there.
He did, yeah. He managed to hold the speed of the car really well.
That's an unusual place to see an overtake.
Yeah.
Very well done by Sopfrich there, though.
He made it stick. You can't complain.
I mean, Kurzer can complain, but it won't help him much in this situation. But yeah, I think trickiest part of the whole track. Turn 15, uphill braking zone while turning, lots of forces acting on the car. Now
taking the last sector to me is complete magic. It's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I seem to do the same inputs, but the car does wildly different things. But that's more a measure of my skill or lack of than anything else.
I mean, if you struggle through that section, especially in the GT3, you can solve a lot of your issues with brake bias, because of course you are uphill, meaning that you have more force on the rear wheel tires. It's basically like when you drive a bike, or ride a bike, better said. You use the rear brakes when going uphill so you don't flip over.
Yeah.
No, other way around. You use the front wheels.
Yeah.
And downhill, the back wheels. I mean, I haven't ridden a bike in ages. They say you don't mislearn it, but maybe you actually do. But you use the one that is higher on the elevation, and therefore you shift the brake bias more forward in that section and help the car staying quite straight while braking, of course giving you more understeer. But understeer is easier to drive than oversteer, but has less pace potential, so it's a bit of a wagering advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, true. That is, being a less skilled driver, I tend to err on the side of understeer because it's always better to be able to see what's coming than end up hitting it backwards.
I mean, there is a very famous quote from a certain rally driver to that topic, which you can also find in the game, in the loading screens, actually.
There is.
So, there are lots of great things, actually. Shout out to Kim Oramakan at this stage. He came out with a lot of them and found them.
But I think he did miss off the one that is a pet peeve of anybody who's been a sim racing steward, which is the Ayrton Senna quote about going for gaps. And anybody who has done any kind of sim racing stewarding over the course of their sim career will have a
Cry
big
in
bone
agony.
to pick with that quote.
I mean, it has been the sim racer's excuse for massive dive bombs since 1989, but yeah, of course, those words are showing something in terms of how the person who said those words thinks.
You suggesting the great Ayrton Senna may have been a bit aggressive.
Wouldn't make it worse, right? It's just the fact that he's aggressive. I mean, depending on the cars you drive and the circumstances you are in, being more aggressive or more passive can both have advantages. And especially in the days of Ayrton Senna, of course, being aggressive was kind of rewarded with one drop result and a point system that doesn't reward anything below 6. So
that is very true.
or was it already 8th at this stage?
Might
be both actually. Started out definitely with 6, top 6, and then top 8, I think. But yeah, we didn't always have the fancy top 10 points paying position, or top 15, or top 43 if you watch NASCAR. But that's also, of course, playing a role. Depending on how the points are handed out, consistency is rewarded much more than being fast.
Yeah. From the events I've organised, I try to spread the points out so that they reward consistency and consistently turning up. That is my current theory, and I stick by it.
I mean, being consistently in the contest definitely was helping Dominic Ladler secure the championships earlier, usually.
Yep.
Maybe Joachim Thunder can turn it around for this season of RCL. He is still in the lead, building a gap, 5 seconds right now. If he can stay ahead...
Rich is very slowly catching up with Dominic Ladler as well.
I mean, that would be huge news to Joachim Thunder.
Yes.
And we've seen Oscar Sobrich a couple of times now, I think. And I remember him as a very solid finisher, so will be very interesting in the longer run. The AMG is also a bit more friendly to its tires than the Porsche, and especially than the Audi, but he seems to be driving fairly smooth, so maybe this could be his, I don't know the English equivalent to it.
Fairly consistent. Go on. Say, try and describe it in German. I'll attempt to translate.
I will explain in German. You try to translate. That sounds very good. Having an ace up your sleeve.
That works.
It's actually not that complicated. You just have to translate word by word, and you have the same thing.
Oh.
But we've seen this before, right? AMGs being very good in the long run, if we think about a certain Nordschleife event.
Yeah, very true.
Which, by the way, next week on Friday, of course, will be round 2 of the RENNSPORT Founders League with GT4s. I think that will be one of the more interesting races we've had. GT4s are so closely matched. I guess you are Team BMW.
I've been trying to play with the R8 more recently. It's taken me a bit of getting used to because it is very skittish into corners compared to the BMW. But I'm really liking it. I'm really liking that you do a lot more of the steering with your right foot.
When I've anticipated that shift in opinion.
Well, I own the R8 GT3 in game, so it's the one that's got all my liveries on. So I've been trying to use that, and so I thought, they're both R8s. What's the difference? I'll start using it in GT4s. But It is quite different, funnily enough.
It is quite the difference, yes. Even
But
though,
yeah, I do think there will be a brilliant race in the Nordschleife. I know in pre-release testing, we did quite a lot of GT4 Nordschleife tests, and they were always fun.
I mean, it's definitely very different to the GT3 car in a way that the cars are more loose on the rear end. You have less downforce. You have to lift for more corners. If you lift, the car gets more unstable, of course.
Yep, for sure.
It is a very different beast in both cars. And also the race distance is different. Since we had 60 minutes in the GT3s, we will have 90 in the GT4s.
Nice. I think one of the most exciting races, if you put exciting into air quotes, and perhaps not for the racing reasons, still might be the touring cars, just because people drive them so much less.
Yeah, I mean, the touring cars, we've had them for a long time in the game at this stage. And being the only front-wheel drive cars we have at the moment, of course it's gonna drive completely different, but a touring car, you can just throw it into turns. It's very underestimated by a lot of people, especially those who are not that used to touring cars. And it takes a very different kind of skill. That's why you see so different names up top on the leaderboards between front-wheel drive cars and wheel and all-wheel drive cars. Because it's such a different skill.
Yeah, you've really got to throw the weight forward while you're braking and just try and swing the back end out. The poor rear tires take a real beating.
Yeah, indeed. And also the way you modulate the throttle and work with that, it's basically working opposite to what you expect in a GT car, for instance.
Yeah.
And also with the way the driving is rewarded in terms of time gains. Some can be one of the best players in a touring car, but not be good in a GT car, and the other way around. Many who drive a GT car can struggle in a touring car and just stay with their GT cars because they're used to it.
Amateurs. I'm really bad in both. That's the way the real skill comes in.
That's very true as well. But what I definitely noticed is, back when I was a bit more active in driving in general, that learning touring cars did help me a lot with driving GT cars. Because that's where I really learned to modulate the throttle, to have a feel for the car behaving. Of course, when you put down the throttle while turning in a touring car, you just go straight. In a GT car, you probably are facing the wrong direction after doing so. So, in both cases, it's not as good, but in a GT car, you just go like, that was bad, but you're not gonna really change anything. In a touring car, you will see the time gains after a couple of laps, and you gain and suddenly gain 2/10 through a corner, which you thought you maxed out. And that's the way you really learn throttle control. Of course, these cars also don't have ABS, that's also a skill to learn.
I don't think they have. Do they have TC? I can't remember.
TC not. I think ABS is available for them in certain packages and also in the one we have in RENNSPORT, but for the most part, across sim racing, they don't have ABS.
That's fair.
Meanwhile, Soprich lost a bit of time, I think. He was down to 8 seconds at some point, so he's now down to 8.5, which 5/10 isn't too much, of course, but still.
His last lap was a little bit off pace. But it's only 0.6 seconds, so it's a bit of a drop in the bucket compared to the actual overall gap.
I mean, Joachim Thunder is just putting down the laps today.
He is, yeah. He's doing exactly what he needs to do, which is just get out in front. And he's doing lap after lap after lap at a fairly decent pace. He's the only one doing 39s right now. So he's just slowly getting that gap bigger and bigger.
I mean, you do start to wonder a bit if Joachim Thunder was able to drive in Orchard Road.
Yeah.
If his internet hadn't cut out with all the chaos at the start. Of course, Dominic Lala still fought his way up to the top again after all that. But if Joachim Thunder was in the mix, could he have profited so much from that to close the gap and basically be equal on points like they have been before?
I think he maybe could have done, yeah. It was an unfortunate set of happenings with Joachim Thunder that have just let him be a bit further afield than he is right now. But he seems to be, all credit to him, he seems to be putting his foot down and making the most of it. He's today's race should sneak that gap a little bit closer. Of course, it's still 25 minutes to go, so he's by all means not finished yet. So anything could happen in the next 25 minutes. So we'll see all our theory crafting get completely thrown in the bin.
Especially since we still have the pit stops to go, and that will be very interesting with Oscar Soprich. What he will do.
Yeah, and we'll get to see how well Ladler thinks his tyres are going. Who do you think's going to blink first, though?
It's very hard to tell. I think Lala and Thunder will stay out. I think all of them will stay out as long as possible, since no one is in the proximity of even remotely undercutting someone.
Yes, that's true.
Maybe that will completely jinx it now, and Soprich is just gonna come into the pits, but I highly doubt it this time around. I'm just thinking about whether if you take tires, will it maybe play out a bit more on this circuit compared to others? Because Fuji has quite the high tire degradation. You don't really get to bring them back into the window because it has so much load going through the tires. You have, of course, the hard braking zone into turn 1, then now this complex coming up turns 3, 4, 5, 6. Very high speed, very high G-forces, especially this turn, turns 4 and 5, 100R. It's just brutal on the outside tires.
Yeah, your tyres don't get a lot of a rest until the start-finish straight, do they?
Yes, and especially since the last part turns 13 to 16, so the last sector going uphill, you are sliding so much due to the elevation and off-camber in those turns.
And in the last lap of the race, Oscar Soprich did the fastest of the top three drivers. He's also joined the 39 club. Joachim Thunder did a fairly rare for him in this race, at least. He dropped into the 40s.
I think they all managed to really settle into their rhythm now, did they?
They have, yeah. They seem to have all got fairly consistent lap times, one lap after another.
Let's just hope they don't settle in too much, because it's not long until we have to go to the pit stops.
No,
because of the fuel load. True. But I may have remembered a certain driver who, in a certain situation, was too much in his well-aforementioned groove and forgot to pit. That one being Remco Major.
I can't. Are you sure it was Remco? That doesn't sound like him.
It does. I thought at first, I mean, you were with me there in Hockenheim, but I genuinely thought that he was going for a crazy plan to play with Tim Schroeder was second in that moment in the race and just build a gap out of nowhere or something, because in terms of racing and also some other parts, but mainly racing, he really is a genius. You can't take that away from him. But in this rare case it was just, well, not really a plan, but not thinking in the right moment.
It was a Bob Ross happy accident.
It worked out for him in the end. I mean,
Yeah.
made things much closer than they had to be, but...
Yokin Thunder going around again. I think he can maybe get another 2 laps out of his fuel tank, but after that he'll be pushing it. The AMG does seem to be doing a lot better on fuel than the Audi.
Of course, also 2 cylinders less, but still hungry.
Oscar Sofrit's last lap was not his best by any means. He seems to have just dropped a bit off after charging.
I mean, there was also the lapping maneuver of Dennis Kurzer in between, because he's now lapped down on him, so... that will have shifted some stuff around. But it's getting a bit brighter, isn't it?
It is a little bit, yeah. Oh, that was a very wide one. The gap between Ladler and Sofrich seems to be fairly consistent.
Joachim Thunder just dropped behind Dominic Ladler in turn 6? What happened there? Did he maybe spin?
I think he maybe did, yeah. Also keeping the spirit of Tim Schroeder alive. He was doing pretty well and then made himself oops. That was a bit hard. Sorry, Tim.
It's still far from over, of course, with 20 minutes left on the clock, and the pit stops now just... I think he will come in now, so he can cool off the tires.
Yeah, it'd be definitely a good time for him to pop into the pit lane. Although I don't think Dominic Ladler will have to just yet.
No, they're staying out. Both staying out. I would have thought with my experience in the Audi on this track, I would have definitely come in. Because it will not bite you right now. You think you're good in this stage of the track, because you had a long straight, but as soon as you now come up to 100R, it will start biting.
Yes. I think it might be a bit of the racer tunnel vision there, that he wants to get Ladler back before he pits. Which, yeah, maybe in a cooler-headed situation, you would have pitted and let his tyres cool down.
But you also don't really know what happened, so maybe it wasn't a full spin, maybe he just got way too wide, and instead of trying to force it back into line, he just let it roll out.
Well, whatever happened, it's now closed the race up quite considerably. Not just between Ladler and Thunder, but also Oscar Sofrich is only 6.5 seconds away from Thunder.
And as soon as these start fighting, that will be very interesting for Sofrich, if he can get back into the mix. But they will have to come in now.
Yeah, they'll definitely have to come in this lap. I can see pulling over into the pit lane.
Ladler having the slightly better pit entry out of the two of them.
All the top 3 going into the pits.
Kurzer staying out for yet another lap, but he's also a lap down, so he can drive another one. I'm not sure.
It's not by Ladler.
I think Ladler might have had the slightly better pit stop out of the two.
Yeah, he had absolutely no aligning time whatsoever. I mean, it's a very small difference, but he definitely had a very good pit stop. Oscar Sofrich suffered a little bit with getting himself realigned to the box. Just dropping back a few extra seconds from the 2 ahead.
Pierre Colbeck still holding on in 5th here. I mean, in the end, that's still some good points to his name.
Dennis Kurtzer, he's already pitted. He pitted quite early on in the race, to be honest. So he's set to go from here. And Pierre Colbeck has a 5-second penalty to serve as well for track limits.
Gap between Lala and Than have already come down by 5/10. Bit of a drift there for Joachim Thunder, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, before the pit stops, the gap between Sofrich and Thunder was 7 seconds. It is now 15 seconds. So he definitely, I don't know if he had maybe a bit of a bad moment before the pit box, but because I don't think he lost that much time.
I mean, coming into the pit box at Fuji can gain or lose you so much time. Since you come from a very high speed, have to brake very hard. It's not like, for example, Nürburgring or Hockenheim, where you drive into the pit lane separately from the track right after acceleration. Because you're already at such a high speed. Every bit that you travel at maximum speed compared to someone who brakes earlier, you gain so much time.
That is true.
But Thunder is coming in hot. Again, 5/10 chipped away from the lead. We have 13 minutes to go.
Yeah, he's going to be confident that he can close the gap. It's whether or not he can get past Dominic Ladler. We know Ladler can make that Porsche pretty wide what he wants to do.
Taking a bit of a wider line as well.
And none of them did change tyres, so the life that's left in the tyres could become very important through the twistier Sector 2 and Sector 3s for who can put the car exactly where they want it to be.
I've also seen Joachim Thunder use the flash. It's not quite the Tim Schroeder flash, he only pressed once. But he's really gaining a lot in those braking zones. Of course, the Audi and Porsche both having very strong brakes.
Yeah, that is something I've been learning coming from the BMW to the Audi, is the brakes are a lot better. Something that won't be necessarily affecting them for a little while yet, but they are both slowly catching up with Dennis Kurtzer. Within the next, maybe they might get to it before the end of the race, but he might suddenly become a feature in the last lap.
I mean, having a slipstream at some point on this track can be very advantageous.
Yeah, for sure. But coming across a back marker in something like Sector 3 could become very interesting very fast.
The two sides of having either traffic in terms of lap traffic or multi-class traffic. They can be cursed, they can be a blessing, but overall things will equal out over time.
Ladler and Thunder, as you'd expect, doing very similar lap times up front. Oscar Sofrich seems to have dropped off a little bit. He's been doing his last lap was a 41, but his lap before that was a 39 again. So he's definitely got pace. If he just needs to close that gap up, he needs Ladler and Thunder to start fighting.
I mean, these two definitely know each other very well.
Yeah.
Have not been many races where these two have been separated.
No, they're pretty close together in performance, as you said. So they do know each other. They know each other's little tricks, and I'm sure Joachim Thunder flashing. He knows it's not going to affect Dominic Ladler. It's more of a hi, I'm here, and we're going to start fighting.
Dominic Ladler was actually one of the first people in RENNSPORT in the closed beta back then that I had a real-to-real battle with. At Daytona.
Nice.
I overtook him around the outside of the Western Horseshoe somehow. Was a very nice fight. Good memories.
Speaking of overtaken people, have you heard the story of Remco Major and Max Verstappen?
Yeah, he told it to me bi-weekly, basically.
Joachim Thunder is really close up behind now. He's looking to make a move into turn one, I think. And he's going to make it stick at this rate.
Beautifully beautifully used the Audi there to his advantage.
Yeah.
Basically the strong suit of that car. Of course, the Porsche having a very similar strong suit, but Dominic Ladler couldn't really use it because he couldn't undercut Dominic Ladler. He couldn't undercut himself here, correct. He couldn't undercut Joachim Thunder coming out of the turn because it was blocked by the Audi.
Yeah, you could see Ladler was hanging to the left there, trying to get the undercut like we saw earlier on from the BMW, but Joachim Thunder being able to hold his inside line just a little bit more. He managed to cut that one off and say, nope, my position, thank you very much.
Oscar Sobrich, meanwhile, 18 seconds down on the two of them, even though these two are fighting. So for him it will probably be P3, but that's still a podium and that's still good points, seeing as how many people are not turning up today, unfortunately.
We've got Thunder and Ladler coming down the main straight right now, just ahead of them is Pierre Colbeck. So I don't think it'll be long before he starts to become a bit of a feature in their race. Which might give Ladler an opportunity if he can keep the gap close up to Thunder.
Seems like they will reach him into turn 6. Now Thunder has to decide where to go. Goes to the inside. And
Ladler immediately follows him through.
And he's right back in position as well.
Oscar Soprik seems to have had a bit of an off-track moment because he's dropped another 10 seconds back. But this battle for first place is heated up with 6 minutes to go.
Should be 3 laps if I didn't completely miscalculate that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Ladler just dropping back a little bit as they come into the straight, but of course now he gets the huge slipstream down the front straight. But with the way Joachim Thunder is on the brakes into T1, he's going to have to be pretty brave to make a move there. He's keeping in contention, though. Joachim Thunder's definitely not pulling away like the pace we saw before the pit stop from him. His lap times have slowed down a little bit.
I mean,
Although
he's
got a bit
definitely keeping it in a position where he can strike when Thunder, or if Thunder should make a mistake.
Yeah, he's slowly getting dropped off the back, but it's still not far by any stretch of the imagination. Let's see. I mean, Joachim's had kind of a clean lap this lap. He's had nobody in front of him, except for the T1. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 overtake. So we'll see what kind of lap time he does this time around.
I think the third sector is his strong suit in this case. The Audi is very sketchy through there. The Porsche is a bit more planted compared to that.
Yeah. Ladler just never seems to quite get the drive out of the last turn that Thunder does. He always seems to... the gap stays pretty much the same, whereas you'd expect it to close up a little bit more. And Thunder gaining huge amounts of time coming into T1. I think Oscar Sopfrich there falling afoul to the dreaded tyre overheating issues because he's lost even more time since I last said it.
I think Fuji is one of the tracks where it really comes back the most. When you have one off moment that's a bit bigger, coming back from that is very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, like you were saying before about cooling your tyres off, it's not an easy job here at Fuji, that's for sure. And you don't want to be backing off your pace to try and cool your tyres down. So if it happens near the beginning of a lap where you've got all of the twisty parts that's still to come, it can be a bit painful.
But up
Dominic
front
Ladler really closing up there.
Has been around a second the gap in, I think, sector 2 roundabout, and it's back to 6:10.
Yeah, he seems to have a really good sector 3 that time around.
2 more laps.
He doesn't seem to gain that much on the straight. I don't know whether he's just a bit too far away to get the most out of the slipstream. Closing way up into T1 this lap.
Maybe he didn't try to get close. The start-finish line is fairly far backwards in Fuji, and the slipstream effect is very powerful if you are within 4 to 5 tenths and then you slingshot past your opponent. Maybe he doesn't want Joachim Thunder to be able to counter-attack. And
I see what you mean, yeah.
Basically going for that last lap launch, otherwise he would end up being a sitting duck to Joachim Thunder on the final straight.
That's definitely the confident driver's move, isn't it?
I mean, I can assure you that both of them are very confident in their driving.
That's true.
For good reason.
And he definitely seems to be able to stick with Thunder now, whereas before the pit stops he was a little bit off Thunder's pace. But he's maybe letting Joachim sit in front, use up his tyres a little bit more. And yeah, like you said, he might be playing the long game for that last lap lunge.
But here we go, final lap. They have Dennis Kurzer also coming their way soon. So that will also be very interesting for Joachim Thunder to get by quickly without any issues.
Yeah, he's going to have that on his mind all the way around this lap. So I don't think he's going to catch him until later on towards the end.
I mean,
Dominic Ladler dropped back a little bit, though.
your prediction was pretty much spot on, right? With the final lap. Here they go, one final time through the chicane, coming into Sector 3.
Ladler desperately trying to close that gap. At the minute, it's just a bit too much. Trying to try and make a move. I think he might have dropped it back a bit more than he needs to. I don't think he's going to be able to do it because Joachim Thunder's going to get the draft as he comes out the last corner.
Indeed, he gets a big draft by Dennis Kotz, and that draft will catapult him to a victory in RCL Season 2. See an Audi up top for quite some time. We haven't seen that, I think. Dominic Ladler coming home in second. That will still be very good to his championship tally, but Joachim Thunder keeps it alive. So
That's one of each car in the top 4. I got to say it.
Indeed, you did. Oscar Soppich will come home in third, giving him his first podium, so congratulations to him. He definitely had the pace. If it was a bit shorter race, and he hadn't that turn 1 incident, of course a lot of what ifs, but he is definitely one to watch out for future races if he decides to come back, hopefully.
I hope he does. Yeah, he definitely did have pace. He was fast, and I think maybe with a little bit more of experience of how to manage your tires, I think he could be a contender up there with Ladler and Thunder.
Could you quickly check on Pierre Colbeck, because he's stationary on the track in the final sector? Did he maybe run out of fuel?
He has run out of fuel.
Well, last week we've seen a bit of a fairy tale story with the GT4s. Not sure if Kurzer will go for that here. But I think Colbeck has already... Or is that...
Yeah, everyone's already gone past him at this point.
Oh, he's out of turn 3.
Yeah, he's a long way back.
Very unfortunate for him. I mean, it will still give him valuable points, but you want to finish those races, don't you?
Yeah, especially after doing 45 minutes and being half a dozen turns from finishing. It's going to be a bit gutting. A couple of extra clicks on his pit stop fuel, and he would have been fine. But live and learn.
Indeed. But yeah, that was episode 5 of season 2 in Fuji. We will have one more event left to go for, and probably one of the most interesting ones we could have. In Monza, with GT3s. I don't think I need to explain a lot of stuff about that. Should be fairly obvious what to expect. Lots of action, lots of side-by-sides, slipstream battles as we've seen them today.
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting braking moves, I'm sure. And of course, you've got Parabolica, which is another one which is really nice on your tires.
And after that, of course, we will continue with the RCL with season 3, but more infos on that in 2 weeks at Monza. Next week, of course, will be round 2 of the RENNSPORT Founders League and another RCE. A 1 hour GT3 race at Nürburgring. And do you want to have some final words about today's race? Or
it was a bit lacking in cars, but I think it was fairly decent in action. for a while it looked like it was going to be Thunder dominating off the front, and then he decided to make it into a race. I'm going to assume it was on purpose.
I mean, it also wouldn't quite be the first time.
Yeah.
But what a performance there by Joachim Thunder.
It was a
Got
good
a
race
good
by
credit.
him.
But also by Dominic Ladler, very valiant effort as well to keep a very, very fast charging Audi R8 in behind of him. But of course for Dominic Ladler it's also looking very good in the championship. So maybe he's not worried too much at all.
No, the gap will have closed a little bit, but he's still got a fairly commanding lead.
I mean, the gap is now 138 points. That's a lot of math my brain needs to get to. Before it was 158, so he made up 20 points with this race.
Yeah.
He's mathematically still able to win it, Joachim Thunder. But
Maybe
it
he needs to
will
start
need...
paying a few people.
Yeah. But we will see all of that next week in Monza. And until then, I wish you a great evening. We've been Tim and Lino, and until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.